My name is Joe Zahn, and I read about Missouri politics so you don't have to. This is Some Guy with a Tie. Today we are going to do a brief weekly roundup of Missouri political news with my new motto, less snark, more news. Let's put 5 minutes on the clock. Led by Budget Committee Chairman and aspiring Lex Luthor impersonator Cody Smith, the State House signed off on a massive budget this week. The $46.2 billion budget is a record. But does that really mean that much, considering money apparently isn't worth as much due to inflation, and we also maybe shouldn't spend all of it because of a potential recession from inflation? So they left $3 billion sitting in the Treasury unspent. Still, lots of good things in this budget, including funding to replace lead pipes in Missouri schools, because according to a study from last year, over 80% of Missouri kids have lead in their blood, which doesn't seem great. It also includes boosts to higher education funding, both for institutions and scholarships, as well as funding one of last year's most controversial issues, Medicaid expansion. However, it also leaves out increases to teacher base pay, which is the lowest in the country, funding for public school transportation, funding for home health care, and it generally funds most things at a lower level than requested by departments or experts. This leaves a massive surplus available for the Senate to use for their priorities, and many think that's exactly what they'll do, although they can't seem to agree on much these days, even the Senate dress code, so fingers crossed. HB 2012 also passed the House this week, creating additional restrictions on abortion. This creates additional criminal and civil penalties for people getting drugs for abortion, assisting someone with an abortion, or even Googling Planned Parenthood. Actually, I'm being told that last one isn't true. There are no exceptions for rape or incest to the criminal penalties, but if a mother's life is at risk, jail time would be off the table, as long as the abortion drugs are specifically gotten by a doctor. They also made an exception where rapists can't sue someone for an abortion in civil court, but only if they're convicted in criminal court before suing, but their family can sue, unless they aided and abetted the criminal, which would, I assume, also have to be tried in criminal court first. Listen, they don't like abortion. They overly complicated these laws because they can't yet create a total ban with zero exceptions, but obviously that's the goal, which means stay tuned. The House also worked to pass new restrictions on the initiative petition process, which is the way citizens can get items directly onto the ballot to vote for. Past examples would include medical marijuana, Medicaid expansion, or preventing this state from becoming a right-to-work state. Republicans said they needed to prevent the current mob rule happening in Missouri. You know, where people vote for things and the majority determine the outcome. So they are looking to add provisions that say over 50% of all counties must vote for a measure, and over 50% of all current registered voters also must vote for it. Which sounds great until you realize that 50% of all registered voters rarely ever even show up to an election, and the governor gets to decide when these things go on the ballot, meaning that if they put something that they don't like out there in like an August primary, for example, which usually only gets about 20% of all registered voters to even show up, it would have zero chance of passing, even if 100% of those voters in the election all agree that it should. And I'm 1000% sure this will destroy the initiative petition process, which is the point. If you haven't been following the Agape boarding school story, I'll fill you in. This is a private Christian boarding school in southwest Missouri that made headlines as their doctor has been charged with child sex crimes and 5 employees have been charged with assault. Now, Attorney General Eric Schmidt wanted to see 22 people charged, but the local prosecutor said only 5. The local prosecutor also apparently might have conflicts of interest, blah, blah, blah. Schmidt won't shut down the school, even though 3 of those 5 employees actually having been charged are still working at the school, and Agape isn't licensed by the state because here, religious boarding schools don't have to be. In fact, reporting from the Kansas City Star found that several faith-based boarding schools, including Agape, relocated to Missouri after being investigated or shut down for abuse or neglect in other states, because of course they did. No bills are on the books to change this though, because, I don't know, culture war issues get more campaign donations. Some good news. The Missouri House came together and worked in a bipartisan manner to make Missouri better by passing HB 1699. This bill, sponsored by Representative Lane Roberts, increased protection for domestic violence victims. In his words, the bill seeks to plug some of the gaps in our laws that allow abusers to circumvent the system and continue to use the system actually to further abuse their victims. Victims' rights groups, criminal justice groups have all applauded the bill, and it was really wonderful to see the respect and appreciation on display by legislators. The bill sponsor listened to feedback from other legislators, worked across the aisle to make a good bill better, and it passed with a unanimous vote. So good things do happen in the Missouri government, and I promise to be less snarky, so that's all I'm going to say. And time. Ooh, so close. Next week, I will dig in a bit deeper on one topic. Bye for now.